The Chiefs just locked in a couple of players that could come in clutch during this upcoming season, and in this video, not only will I explain why I think that is, but I'll also dive into the contracts of defensive end Mike Danna and quarterback Carson Wentz, why CEH chose to return to Kansas City, Rees-Zammit weighing in about his upcoming role on the team, and much freaking more. But first, how about those? First up, late Friday afternoon, the Chiefs finally got a deal done with defensive end Mike Danna. This was surprisingly a 3-year deal worth up to $24 million with $13 million guaranteed. Well, I would imagine this is most likely a 2-year deal with an out after those first 2 years are completed, so the majority of that guaranteed money should be within the first 2 years. You can't look at it exclusively as a 2-year, $13 million deal, but the numbers will look closer to that most likely rather than the 3-year, $24 million, $8 million per year average that got announced on Friday. And as of when I recorded this video on Tuesday, Spotrac doesn't yet have the contract details listed, but once we know them, I will let you guys know. I think this is a solid signing for KC regardless, with Brett Veach's first ever draft pick reaching a multi-year extension with the team. Gotta love it. Veach drafted Danna in the 5th round of the 2020 NFL draft, and not only is Danna just 26 years old, but he played the second most snaps of any in the defensive end room and is also coming off a career year. He racked up 6.5 sacks, 47 pressures, kicked inside more than anyone else, and also had the lowest missed tackle rate of the defensive end room at just 5.4%. And this made complete sense to bring back a guy that has shown he can produce at a above average and effective level when called upon, especially considering the fact that Charles Omenihu will be out roughly half the season as he recovers from the ACL surgery he had sometime after the Super Bowl, right after the Super Bowl parade, I believe. And this puts the room to feature George Karlaftis and Mike Danna to most likely be the starters, with players like last year's first rounder, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, and Malik Herring rotating in. That's not to mention the fact that Chris Jones kicks outside at times on key downs as well. Then there's also players like Truman Jones, BJ Thompson, among others, including somebody they could potentially draft who will be fighting for playing time in that room as well. But the Danna signing puts them in a pretty good spot overall, at least in the defensive end room leading up to the draft. All right, from here, we've got to get into the state of the running back room as Clyde Edwards-Helaire is back for one more year, and then look at 2 players the Chiefs signed today that could play some key roles this season. But before I do, I've got to tell you about the delicious sponsor of today's video, Good Chop. They deliver customizable boxes of high quality meat and seafood that are vacuum sealed and flash frozen at peak freshness so you can stock your freezer and cook on your schedule. My family eats a ton of protein with every meal, and the fact that we can choose from over 70 high quality cuts and have it shipped to our door to save both time and money is incredibly helpful. We've been using Good Chop for over 6 months now, and they have not let us down yet. My girls love the thick cut bacon. The ground beef made some excellent burgers. The marbling and the steaks this go around kept them juicy as ever, and the Gulf shrimp paired perfectly with them per usual. Then I had their steelhead trout for the first time ever today, and it was fantastic. I also love that Good Chop sources its meat and seafood from American farms and fisheries. Their meat comes with no antibiotics or added hormones ever, and they believe in their quality so much that they offer a 100% money back guarantee. So either love Good Chop or get your money back. And to get your box of customized high quality American meat and seafood, as well as show support for the channel, go to goodchop.com/YouTube and use code HBTC120, or click the link in the description down below to get $120 off across your first 4 boxes today. Again, that's goodchop.com/YouTube and use code HBTC120 to get $120 off across your first 4 boxes. And then backup quarterback Carson Wentz's contract details were recently revealed, and it was a surprisingly higher number than expected, at least to some. At the same time, it makes sense considering Wentz is only 31 years old and is arguably the most talented backup QB2 the Chiefs have had in the Mahomes era. That's no disrespect to Chad Henne. Anyway, Wentz signed a 1-year, $3.325 million deal that includes a cap hit of $2.7 million, a dead cap of $2.2 million, and a base salary of $1.2. This is noticeably higher than Blaine Gabbert's 1-year, $1.3 million deal that he signed with KC last offseason, but again, I think the Chiefs leveled up with Wentz's QB2, and it's worth the money. Wentz also had his introductory presser with the media last week, saying he's here because he admires the winning culture and great fan base. Last year wasn't as fun for him, as he sat out and basically waited for a call week after week, signing with the Rams around week 10 last season, but this year. He's glad to already be with the team so he can start prepping and planning early in the offseason. He mentioned he has loose familiarity with the Chiefs' style of offense due to playing underneath Doug Peterson for 5 years with the Eagles. And if you didn't know, Doug Peterson used to be offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs under Andy Reid before he became the head coach of the Eagles. Now he's with the Jags. But because of Wentz's time with Doug Peterson in Philly, he thinks the offense will make sense to him and resonate pretty quickly, being the most familiar offense to him out of any he's played in since he left the Eagles. He played a season with the Colts, then was with the Commanders, and half a season roughly with the Rams last year. Then I did a video already on Wentz recently talking about his success with quarterback sneaks throughout his career and how that could be a sneaky way KC uses Carson this upcoming season. I mean, it makes sense to me. He's a big guy, 6'5", and weighs in around 240 pounds, which has definitely played a helpful role in him converting 47 of his 53 QB sneak attempts in his career. And while Wentz credited Jason Kelce with a lot of his QB sneak success, he still went 9 of 10 in his QB sneak attempts with the Colts without Jason Kelce, so this man can do it no matter who's under center. And in his introductory presser with the media last week, Carson was actually asked about this very thing and if that's been a point of conversation between him and the Chiefs at all.
That is news to me. I mean, yes, I've had lots of success with that. Whatever capacity they need me to help in any way, that's why I'm here. So looking forward to it.
So it seems like this idea hasn't been discussed yet with Wentz, but I still like the odds of him helping with this at times, considering over the last 2 seasons, the Chiefs are 25th in the NFL on their success rate of converting on 3rd or 4th and 1 or less, only succeeding 52.4% of those attempts. Meanwhile, Carson Wentz has a career success rate on the QB sneak of 88.67%. And that is why I think the Chiefs should consider it and at least discuss it with him this offseason / OTAs, training camp, etc., because this idea could only potentially help in those situations for the Chiefs offense this season. Next up, CEH spoke with the media on Monday as he officially inked his 1-year deal with the team. The Chiefs announced they signed him shortly after the Snead trade became final. I think it was then Wentz. CEH was then the next day, and it was a signing that, again, made sense for both sides, kind of like Mike Danna. Clyde said this free agency, he made the decision that was best for him after thinking on it and weighing over his options, and the best decision was to come back home to the team that drafted him and keep things going in a positive direction with KC. He's now entering season number 5 in the NFL, yet is only 24 years old, though, to be fair, he turns 25 on April 11th here in a couple of days. He's glad to be back with his teammates, guys that he's grown very close with over the years, particularly Travis Kelce. He gave him a lot of praise in his presser, and CEH believes he still has the ability to contribute this season, proving it last year when he stepped in for both Pacheco and McKinnon at times when they were injured. So yeah, it's a fine signing. It's probably close to a vet min deal, and Clyde has proven he can be an asset, especially when not necessarily being used as the primary RB1. That's going to be Isaiah Pacheco. Sure, he's not the fastest guy in the world, but will help raise the floor of the running back room and alleviate any moves for a running back in the draft needing to be forced. I think they will draft a running back quite possibly in the later rounds unless they are super high on the Deneric Prince or LaMichael Pirine, but there's some backs in the draft that they could look at. There's also this, Jerick McKinnon is a free agent, but with him turning 32 in May, who knows what's next for him at the moment. I'd imagine if the Chiefs brought McKinnon back, it would be later in the offseason, possibly maybe as late as around the time of training camp. He signed back on May 3rd last year, immediately following the draft, but back in 2022, McKinnon signed in June before training camp, so time will tell if KC ends up bringing him back or not, but if they do, it's going to be later this offseason. Then also, technically the rugby star from Wales, Rees-Zammit, is listed as a running back on the roster. I'm not sure what to do with that guy at this present time, but he's been training hard as he preps to make the transition from professional rugby to the NFL. His movement is certainly unique when you watch him running his drills and running his routes, but I can still see him getting an opportunity, even if it's just preseason for now, as the team's kick returner. And lo and behold, Rees-Zammit actually basically confirmed this today when he appeared on the Rugby Pod to discuss how things have been going since he decided to join the NFL's International Player Pathway program.
Yeah, so the plan we've got is obviously the new kickoff rules this year is absolutely massive. That's where my main position is going to be. So I've got to fight to be a starter in that position this year.
And with his speed, vision, and rugby experience, this is definitely the most logical place to start for him. He said he wants to fight as hard as he can to earn a starting role for that, but also knows he will be asked to contribute in the offense. and he's going to do all he can to learn the playbook, which is massive compared to the average rugby playbook, though he knows learning this is going to take him some time and he's got to be patient. LRZ also detailed about his experience after the 20 weeks of training in Florida with the International Player Pathway Program, say that 5 times fast, noting he visited with the Browns, Jets, and Broncos all within a few days. The 4th team he visited, however.
So I ended up going to 4 teams. I was meant to go to a load more, but I kind of had my mind set on where I wanted to go based on the plan they had for me. The final one was the Kansas City Chiefs, and they've been absolutely amazing to me. Met all the coaches. We've got a very good plan together and basically see how it goes from now, because it's going to be a busy few months for me.
And aside from KC having a great plan for him, he said one of the deciding factors on him signing with the Chiefs is that
when you step into the facility, you just feel like you're going to win.
Well, you love to hear that, because lately that's all the Chiefs have been doing when it matters most. Back-to-back champs, let's freaking go. He said he flies in soon as well to get to training with the guys, and I would imagine he's flying to Texas because he mentioned training with Mahomes and some of the pass catchers. So I would imagine later this week, we see LRZ in Texas with the crew. Then today, the Chiefs made it official when they announced they signed exclusive rights free agents offensive lineman Mike Caliendo and safety Nazeeh Johnson. This was announced a week or 2 ago that they'd been tendered, but the players still have to sign their contracts. And this announcement means they've officially signed on the dotted line. Caliendo can play either guard position or center if needed. So I'm not ready to say he's the Nick Allegretti replacement, because Allegretti is a freaking dog, but he can be used in a versatile way similar to how Allegretti was. Then for Nazeeh Johnson, this man was beginning to get work in with the first team defense at training camp last year before sadly tearing his ACL, with special teams coordinator Dave Tobe saying Nazeeh was one of the best special teams gunners in the entire league by the end of his rookie season. So while he's set to return from his torn ACL and should be ready to go, the question is, can he get back to as close as possible as he was physically pre-injury? He ran a 4.35 40, I believe, and logged a 42-inch vertical in the lead up to the 2022 NFL draft. So that kind of speed back there in the secondary, as well as maybe special teams, would never hurt. And the reason why both of these guys could be clutch for the team this year is Mike Caliendo provides depth in an area that is lacking with the absence of Nick Allegretti. I mentioned that a bit earlier, but offensive line depth is extremely important and something the Chiefs will never ever forget again due to Super Bowl 55. If any of the interior trio, Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, or Trey Smith go down this season, you never wish it'll happen, but it did happen to Joe Thuney, and Nick Allegretti played in some key games, including the Super Bowl. Mike Caliendo could very well be the next man up with Allegretti's absence. Caliendo played in 8 games last year, logging 64 offensive snaps as well as some special team snaps, but again, wasn't called upon over Nick Allegretti, and this year could be his year. Then when you add in the fact that he's not expensive at all as an ERFA, costing the team around $1 million, a little bit less, I think, this is a win-win. Then for Nazeeh, of course, he provides special teams depth and could very well earn the bragging rights of one of the best special teams gunners in the NFL again. But this is also an extremely athletic guy going into year 3 with the same team that features the best defensive backs coach in the game in Dave Merritt. If anybody can help Nazeeh rise up to an even higher level, it's going to be Dave Merritt. And if you combine that with the fact that Snead is now gone, Nazeeh could very easily find himself seeing real playing time in the secondary in some capacity, whether that's at corner where they moved him from safety or even at safety where he played in college. This man is basically an underrated, versatile weapon for the secondary that's had time to learn and grow from some of the best in the business. And whether or not he's a starter from day one or in the rotation, injuries happen and his name could very well be called upon in a more serious capacity regardless. Brian Cook out on IR, and other players got banged up in the secondary as well. So with all that being said, this is why I think both offensive lineman Mike Caliendo and defensive back Nazeeh Johnson are clutch additions to the team now that they are officially signed, and why I think they can make an impact at some point this upcoming season. But with all that being said, let me know your thoughts on their return in the comments down below. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?